I'm just going to do a lot of reading, because where I really where I'm at with David, it's just not one chapter at a time. It's the multiple of chapters of how his life unfolds. Can I say that? And because I wasn't feeling so hot yesterday, I sat up in my office or up in my room on my chair, and I just picked up a book that Sister Sue Beard wrote about how to study the Bible. I figured, well, if I'm up front here, I got to learn how to study the Bible. But you know what? After reading it, I was like, I'm not too far behind. There's certain things that she said that I don't do, but she had some quotes in there. One of the quotes is, you have to put yourself in what you're reading. And for the longest time, I felt that. And you know, because of the way that I am and the way that we know that everybody else is, we always put ourselves in the good guy. Can I say that? We're never the bad guy. No. But once we start reading the Word and we start letting the Word do its work with the Holy Ghost, all of a sudden you start finding out some of the bad guy is not totally out of you. And then you get into Sunday school, and the very first thing they come out with, they start talking about forgiveness. Great. Great. And then I have Brother Bud come over, and I'm sitting there because I'm trying to stay away because, you know, as my brother said, we've all been taught very well, stay away, right? I don't have anything. It's just sinuses. And you know how sinuses, they start draining and they get into your lungs. And then it feels like when you already have pressure on your lungs, and you put a little bit more, you don't know what to do. So Brother Bud comes over and he starts talking to me, and he starts talking about forgiveness, and I'm going, oh man, Brother Bud, you're getting, no, I don't have no more tears. And after he got done telling me, if you want to know what he said, talk to him. He'll be more than happy to explain it to you. He can do it a whole far better than me because I got lost at 70 times 7. But when he walked away, I heard this inside of me. God's forgiven you, but are you going to forgive God for putting you through what you're going through?
Processing.
So here we go, folks. I'm going to start out with one little verse because I read it this morning, and on Bible Gateway, you know how they get the verse of the day? I just want to read it. But speaking the truth in love, we must grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. I just thought it was good. You want it deeper than that? Go ahead. But I just thought it was good. So I'm going to start with a little recap. In 1 Samuel 17, we all know what happened in 1 Samuel 17, right? We had a war. And guess what? David won. He won. I know. We've heard it so much. It doesn't affect us no more. Because how I know? Because it didn't really affect me. But really, it does affect you. David won the war. That one. Or let me clarify, not war, battle. Is that better? See, now I got to sit down. So we get all the way down to verse 54. And I'm just going to read, and then we're going to go into 18. David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. In Brother Kelly's book, he says that's not a good thing he did. The head was a good thing. He brought the head to the church to show the church that, you know what, I have victory over this. But he took his armor and put it in his own tent. Brother Kelly said it wasn't good, but that's Brother Kelly. You want to talk to him about it? Talk to him about it. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, his captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. Now, if you read the chapter before, Saul is like me, forgetting things all the time. Because Saul had a spirit would come upon him, right? And so he needed somebody to play to take the evil spirit away. We all know this, right? Say, please satisfy me. Say yes. 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 All right? I'm just trying to get through this little bit of background. All right? And the king said, inquire thou whose son is this stripling is. As David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. He's making sure that the church knew who had control, and he brought it to the king and telling the king, I've got the king's head. I got the enemy's head. But he was just a stripling in Saul's eyes. Yeah. And one of the commentators or something that I read over the week, it was stripling as a runt. He looked at him as a runt. Really? He might have been 16. Luke, how old are you? 19. You're 19? Oh my God, Jeremy. He is growing up fast. I was going to use him as a good step. So you're within the age group, all right? But seriously, you look at him, he's got facial hair. But here's a boy. Well, he's not even a boy. He took out a giant. Because everybody else in the land or in the church, or in, Stephen, you got to stop doing that, in Israel was afraid to fight him. That's it. He was crazy enough that, you know what? Things would happen in the past, you know what? I'm going to do it. Because I'm going to take the reproach away from the church. That's exactly what he said. And according to Saul, there was a little bit of prize if anybody who won what came along with it. And we're going to get into that, what took place. All right? As David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine. And Saul said to him, whose son art thou, young man? And David answered, I, the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. You look up of his name, Jesse means extended one, or existing one. He's been there from the beginning, and he's from the house of bread. Go figure. Verse 1 of chapter 18. Is this okay? Yeah. This is just what I just want to read. I just got to look at a couple of notes I got written down. All right. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knitted with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So now we got the other character who was back in chapter 14. He's now here in chapter 18. He's back on the scene. Remember what he did back in 14? He took over. He went to battle with a couple garrisons of the Philistines, and he won. And the Lord was with him. But he was one of the ones who was afraid, who wanted to go up against this guy. Here's a little background. Now, I have to give Brother Kelly the props on this. I love his notes, some of his notes. Jonathan, he said at this time, he was around 40 years old. And David was 16, 17, give or take. And this says that Jonathan was knitted with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Unbelievable. There had to be something about his character. It wasn't just because Saul was a warrior, Jonathan was a warrior, and David was a warrior. They had something in common. And somehow you get knitted together. He got knitted together. And Saul took him that day and would let him go not more home to his father's house. Verse 2, Samuel prophesied in chapter 8 that a king, remember they came to Samuel and they said, we want a king. We no longer want to do it the way God's been doing it. We want a king. And it bothered Samuel. And Samuel went to the Lord and told him everything that they said to him. And the Lord said to him, give them what they want. Did he? And so he turned around and Samuel, he warned them. He gave them a warning. Isn't that like God? I'll give you what you want, but I'm going to give you the warning. Here's the warning. A king will do this to their sons. And if you go back to chapter 8, he said that he's going to take your sons and make them captains over thousands, over hundreds, over 50s. He's going to take your women or your girls and women to be confectionaries. He's going to take your money. He's going to take your goats, your sheep, all your lands, all your best stuff. He's going to take for himself to give it to the people who work for him. So basically, that prophecy is coming to pass. Verse 4. Verse 3. And Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. Every commentary, even Brother Kelly, I started out with him, but then I started looking through it, and most of the commentaries on this part, on this making a covenant, they said it was a very soulish thing. And literally I started going, God, what's that all about? And literally, this morning when I was in the shower, I heard, don't make a covenant with things that you can't see the end of. Because you don't know what the end of that covenant is going to be. Here's our warning. We got a book that we can read about a whole 3 guys and see their outcome. God never changes. It's just one of those things. Have you ever done anything you wish you would have never done, or said anything what you wish you would have said, or made a promise you wish you never promised? And guess what? Just to save face, you have to carry it out to your hurt. And basically all it is God's teaching you Don't make covenant with things that he told you not to make a covenant with. And you know what the crazy thing is? It could be family, which is the hardest. And Jonathan stripped himself of his robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garment, even to the sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. Verse 4, we need to strip ourselves of our robe, our flesh. How about this? Our new man. And let the Christ have full rule. John 3:30, he must increase and I must decrease. Or I decrease. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. It's hard enough trying to get rid of the old guy, but when God wants you to lay down the new guy, Jesus did, and he's the new guy. He laid it down so that he could forgive 70 times 7. And David went out. Now I like this part, because this puts a little check and balance into our lives as our daily walk with the Lord. David went out wheresoever Saul sent him, behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war. And he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servant. This is how I know that David was a warrior, because you're not just going to stick any 16, 17-year-old kid over a bunch of warriors. One commentator said that it was his select bodyguards. It was the ones who protected Saul. There was a reason. And it came to pass. When David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines, that the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet the King Saul, with tambourets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him, and he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000, and to me they ascribe but 1,000. And what can he have more but the kingdom? Saul was starting to remember something. He wasn't quite sure, but he was starting to remember something. I had this thought this morning. How did Samuel know that he actually said that? He wasn't there. Brother Ed said, don't be thinking. I guess it was the same way that the prophets told one of the kings that as you're laying on your bed, you were thinking this, this, and this. You can't hide anything from God. How did Moses write all the first 5 books of the Bible? See, this is how big our God is. This is how big he is, isn't it? I like it because he gets you to think outside of your world. And saw I David from that day forward. And it came to pass on the morrow that an evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times. And there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. I had this thought. I had a lot of thoughts this morning.
All right.
And then Brother Ed says, you're not supposed to think. So I started thinking again, because he said that, and I was like, oh, here goes my message for today. But this thought I had was, remember what Dale said last week about what's in your hand? Do you want the hand of cutting off the ear or the hand of putting it on? And I was like, David had in his hand a harp. He was playing to get rid of something. But Saul had a javelin. Now, I looked this up. Kings always walked around with a javelin in their hand, just to show that they were in control. They were the ones who had authority. They were the ones in power. And he just sat there. One commentator said he just sat there and he just fiddled with it all the time. How would you like to have that guy as your ruler? But my question is what do you want in your hand? Because he's made us kings and priests. Really, all I want in my hands is bread and wine. And I'm learning that. That's all I want to bring is bread and wine. Because you know why? There's enough war out there. We don't need it in here. I'm not talking about in here. I'm talking about in here. Saul cast a javelin, and he said, I will smite David to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him. And he was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him and made him his captain over thousands. And he went out and came in before the people. This is amazing. What's that old saying? Your enemy, you keep him close to you. Really what he was doing was he put him over his thousands is because it was making him profitable. He had a little bit of Jacob in him. A little bit of Laban in him. How do you know? Hang on. And David behaved himself wisely in all of his ways, and the Lord was with him. So when we go to work, young people, remember who's in charge of you. Promotion always comes from the Lord. In everything we do. And if you look at your boss, it doesn't matter if he's the owner, your project manager. It don't matter if it's just a journeyman who's running the job. It doesn't matter who it is. But if you look at him as God, and you give him 100%, God will.
Yes, he will. Amen.
It might take a time. It might take 40 years.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Lord.
But it's how you keep your attitude towards him. I always said this. I never thought I'd be making the amount of money I'm making now. I make good money. I really do. But I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be making that much because where I started out from. And I'm not boasting about me, but look at your lives. And we can go through inflation and all that honky-dory stuff. But really, you just look at your life and look at what God has done because you kept a right attitude towards him. And you looked at everything that God give you that job, give you whatever it is for one purpose so that you can give it back to him. And guess what he does? He blesses it. He tells you to give you 10, but he counts it as you gave it all. That's only our God. And David behaved himself wisely in all of his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and he came in before them. He really did. He kept himself good. And Saul said to David, behold, my elder daughter, Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me. Oh yeah. Fight the Lord's battle. Really? That ain't what my Bible says, but that's all right. For Saul said, let not my hand be upon him, but let the hands of the Philistines be upon him. Here's the crazy thing. Crazy thought. David did something that everybody told him, this is what the king is going to do. He's going to give you his daughter to marry. He's going to make your family tax-free, exempt. And you're going to get all the blessings that the king will give. He goes and does it, and then he turns around and he says, oh, I'm going to give you my daughter. Starting to look a little two-faced to me. And David said unto Saul, who am I, and what is my life, or what is or my father's family in Israel, that I should be a son-in-law to the king? Here's a little side note, little funny. I think it's funny. Nick and Abby, right before they got married, they were at the house one night. And we were just standing around and we were talking. And I looked at Nick and I said to Nick, I says, I got a question for you, Nick. He says, what's that? I said, what do you want? Do you want a father-in-law or do you want a father? And I told him, I said, I don't know how to be a father-in-law. You'll get it. You'll get it. I don't look at my 2 daughters, my 4 daughters.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
My parents never looked at any of their kids as second rate. My in-laws never looked at me as second rate. And that's how I could call my in-laws. And my parents did the same thing. They called their in-laws, for better terms, mom and dad. That's respect. That's just respect. But within the middle, in the midst of that, over time, you'll find out that you start loving them as your own parents. guess what happens? You don't see the difference. But it came to pass at that time when Merab, Lord, 21st century name, please. Saul's daughter should have been given to David, and she was given her to Adriel, the Bethuelite, to wife. This is what I got, Melite. And Saul said, I'll give him to her that she may, oh, wait a second, I'm sorry. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. And they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I will give him her that she may be a snare to him. You got to think, listen to how this guy's mind, dude, has anybody read this before? I mean, this is how people still think today. I'm not talking about outside. I'm talking about right here. I heard Brother Bud on Thursday night, he was talking about an adulteress. And literally what an adulteress really is, if you look up the word adulteress, we always think that it was somebody, a woman married to a man, and it was somebody else. But if you're married to Christ, and you got your mind floating in other places where it ain't supposed to be, guess what you become? You're the adulteress. Because you're married to him. Yeah, I found myself saying, God, forgive me. More than once. Amen. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, commune with David secretly. See, everything's got to be done in secret. Remember when we were growing up? Pastor always used to say, parking lot prophecies. Remember he used to say that? I never could figure it out until one day I got a parking lot prophecy. I was like, oh my gosh. A seed got planted. Seeds get planted. But if there's nobody there to judge it, guess what happens? You start cultivating it, and it'll start growing. Commune with David secretly and say, behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Of course, everybody loves him. He's David. He's Jesus. Everybody loves Jesus. Now, therefore, be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spake those words in the ear of David. And David said, seem it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed. Well, we knew he was poor in his brother's eyes and lightly esteemed in his brother's eyes. But God had a different view of him, didn't he? See, we look at ourselves like that we're poor and lightly esteemed. But I heard today, right, in Sunday school, the way God looks at us was a complete, finished work. Because he's looking through the blood of Jesus. Amen. Hallelujah. And the servants and the servants of Saul told him, saying, on this matter spake David. And Saul said, Thus shall ye say to David, the king desires not any dowry. This walk with Christ is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you something. How do you know? Watch. But 100 foreskins of the Philistines to avenge of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hands of the Philistines. Conniver. The crazy thing is, this isn't the first time we heard something like this, similar within every scripture before this happened. It's not the first time. See, I remember this scene. The devil does the same old thing. It's the same old thing. He's stuck on the same old wheel, going around and around. He just uses different people.
Yeah.
But God is bigger than the boogeyman. And Saul said, thus shall you say to David, the king's desire of a dowry, 100 foreskins of the Philistines to avenge the king's enemy. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, listen to David's reaction. It pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. Think about that. Not only was he going to be the king of a nation, because he's already been anointed to be king of a nation, now he's going to be the son-in-law of the present king. Well, really, he wasn't. He was acting. It's like our government acting on the stage of life, but really God's already rent the kingdom out of his hand, and he's given it to somebody else. But now David's going to take the two and become one, because it pleased him. Now I lost my... And it pleased David well to the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Wherefore David rose up and went, he and his men, and slew the Philistines, 200 men. And David brought their foreskin and gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. He wanted it so bad, he says, I'm going to do something better. I'm going to double it, just to prove that I can do it. You got to remember, he was only 16, 17 years old. 16, 17-year-old kids are what? Pretty cocky, especially if he's already taken out the biggest guy on the earth at the time. I used to have a friend when I lived in Michigan, because I wasn't very big, you all remember, right? I had a friend who was 5'2", and he wore a pair of cowboy boots to make him 5'4". And he was a pretty good friend. The only reason I really liked him a lot is because he had a Corvette. And so we used to go riding around on the weekends. In the town that I lived in, we used to cruise up and down town. And we used to go down around, and we used to park behind the post office, and we all sit down there, and no, kids, I did not do anything stupid. The truth. But he would literally walk around and look for the biggest guy in the parking lot. He had the Napoleon complex. you're right, Brother Bud, just to prove a point that, you know what, I might be small, but I'm going to take you out. And he always said the first shot is the best shot. And David took his first shot, and it was the best shot. I don't know why he even said that. And Saul saw, the foreskins and made the king Saul, and Saul gave him Michal as his daughter. And Saul saw and knew. He knew. There was no doubt in his mind no more. He knew for a fact that Samuel's words has come to pass. And the new king was in his family. Knew that the Lord was with David and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. Now he's in a pinch. And Saul was yet more afraid of David. When Christ starts arising in our life, the flesh of our carnal mind is petrified because he knows that his time is short. See, we don't believe those scriptures, but really it's the truth. The Bible says, resist the devil, and he'll flee. Why is he going to flee? Because greater is he that is in you. Do we believe it? Well, I tell you what, yesterday I wasn't really believing it too much, but really, the Word says it. So I have to believe it. I mean, we can't pick and choose what we like out of the Bible. We can't. We only like the good stuff. Pastor always used to say this. We just spit out the chicken bones. Then we give them to our chickens, huh? Monica? Oh yeah, I gave my chicken the carcass and man, there was nothing left but the backbone. They even ate all the bones except for the backbone because it was just a little too sharp. It was amazing. They ate their cousins and they didn't even realize it. And Saul was yet more afraid of David. And Saul became David's enemy continually. I'm here to say, guess what? The battle's over. The battle's over. It doesn't matter how I think in the middle of the night or early in the morning. Really, the battle's over. And I believe wholeheartedly there is a people. Not going to be, there is a people. There's a people sitting in front of me who believes that God's going to have his way, is having his way in the midst of the family right now. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after they went forth that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. If you've taken on the name of Jesus, it's no longer your personal name. It's his name. That's why we have to act better than everybody else. So, Brother Stephen, why did you read it like this? Well, he's made us kings and priests, correct? We believe it. And we all want to be, I keep going back to that song, God, I want the heart of David. And if we start reading on, and really, I've been battling with the Lord. I haven't been battling. I've been asking the Lord, I really don't want to keep going. I'd like to move on. I'd like to get into the New Testament. I would. But if he keeps telling me you just keep doing what you're doing, I gotta keep doing what I'm doing. But if we want a heart of David, if we want David's heart, we're going to have to go through. You got to remember, this is the beginning. God said that my lineage is going to go through David. I'm going to have a seed that sits on the throne. There has to be a beginning. And God is mercifully has shown us. Listen, David had to go through the stuff that David went through so he could write all those Psalms. So that you and I can read all those Psalms so that we don't have to go through what David went through to get the same heart. Because as I kept reading on, I finding out that David had a lot of Saul in his heart. Even though Saul was his continual battle, David did some conniving stuff that Saul did. What I just read about what Saul tried doing to David, David turned around and did it to Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, and guess what? He killed him. God was merciful on David. But the reason why he was merciful is because he said that my word is going to, my seed's going to go through him. And the crazy thing is, out of that whole messed up thing that David did, because he had the heart after God. That God could forgive him 70 times 7. And this was before the outpouring of the Holy Ghost. And I've always heard all my life, since the outpouring of the Holy Ghost, the only thing is, yes, we have grace, but God jacked it up higher. Because Jesus said, if you even look, you've committed. Jesus said it. I didn't. But if we want a heart like David, we're going to have to go through the process of what David did. Not what he did, but to go through the process of going. Because really, by the time you get down to the end of David's life, you just get down to the end of 1 Samuel, into 2 Samuel, the first chapter, David forgave Saul and Jonathan. Even though Jonathan was a friend of his, Jonathan never left his daddy's house. He wanted the best of both worlds. He didn't want to go through the process like all the others did who was with David. And there's the thing that we don't like. Process. We think process, that process, like processed meat, it's bad for us. Really? It is. It is. But God processes us because he's preparing us for something better. What's better than Jesus said, where I'm at, you'll be there also. How much better can you get than that? He said, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I said in our last elders meeting, I read a prophecy that I found in a booklet of stuff. And the very first thing the man said was, I'm with you. I've never left you. Not in those words. And God has never left us.
Never.
He'll never leave us. Never. 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 David went all the way down to never, never land. And he never left them. That's why he could say, God, if I make my bed in hell, you're there. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shall we stand?